You're listening to the RN Mentor, a podcast designed to document and bring you the work and experience of some of the most influential nurses in our profession. We will be sitting down and having a discussion with the leaders of today's nursing world as they share their work, how they navigate their nursing path, and their views on the future of the profession. My name is Ali Tayeb. I am a registered nurse, United States Navy veteran, a Jonas Veterans Healthcare Scholar, and your host for the RN Mentor. Hello and welcome to another episode of the RN Mentor podcast. I'm super excited to be joined today by Dr. Marketa Houskova. She is the ANAC, American Nurses Association California Executive Director. She started in the ANAC as a volunteer, being so passionate about nursing policy and politics. Dr. Houskova was later named the ANAC Government Affairs Director and State Director. In October 2017, Dr. Houskova was named the Executive Director for ANAC. Dr. Houskova was born under the Communist Regime in then-Czechoslovakia and immigrated to the United States to pursue her American dream. While the Communist regime did not allow her to attend the university, she earned a dual bachelor's in nursing and political science and women's studies at CSU San Marcos. She also completed a dual track and completed her master's in global public health administration and regional development at the University of Miami. Dr. Houskova completed her doctoral studies at the University of San Francisco and obtained a doctorate in nursing practice in executive leadership of healthcare systems. Dr. Houskova was actively involved in a number of political campaigns in the US and in Europe and received internship and later fellowships at the Office of the Vice President of the European Parliament and served as a political advisor in the Czech Republic and the US. Dr. Houskova is a member of several state, national, and global professional organizations and served on several boards with them. Welcome to the show, Dr. Houskova.
Thank you very much. I love the introduction. I'm exhausted just listening to it. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I appreciate you keeping your bio short. I'm sure there's a lot more to it. Some of the ones I get are a doozy. So half the show is spent on the bio. So I appreciate that. So thank you for being here. I'll start with my first question with all of my guests is how did you get started? How did you decide the nursing profession was the way you're going to be moving forward?
Well, I think that in first grade, still then in Czechoslovakia, we were still a socialistic republic. And I went to first grade and I remember as it was yesterday, the teacher asked, can you draw what you want to be? And like the boys around me, right, were drawing either astronaut or president or something. I draw this very awful stick figure. But she had like Red Cross at the bonnet. So she was asking me, what exactly is this? Oh, and then there was like a little sticky figure like in her, like on her arm. And so she was asking me, what exactly is this? And I was like, well, this is a pediatric nurse and this is a little baby. So I'm going to be a pediatric nurse. And so when she looked at those stick figures, I think there was this horror in her eyes, but she understood that I meant to help people. So yeah, it was in the first grade and I never deviated from my plan because while I was born and I grew up and did my schooling under communistic regime, I always knew that if I emigrate, if I leave my country illegally, I will be able to look after myself. I'll be able to pay my bills and look after my family. And also I will be helping people. It's been always part of my DNA. I wanted to help people. I always knew that I was strong and I was a strong advocate. I didn't even know what that meant. But then looking back, I realized that I stood up and I spoke out and I never, I was never silent or quiet when some injustices were happening in school. So that is just part of my DNA. And seeing my home country of now Czech Republic being used and misused and abused and violated and invaded, I think we all have it in our DNA, that we stand up for what is right and we advocate on behalf of those who cannot advocate for themselves. And so then when I continue in my nursing journey, it was always that I was always advocating and speaking up on behalf of my patients or on behalf of their families or on behalf of my colleagues. And so when I was studying politics and they were talking about this political advocacy, and I kept asking, so when do you do that for like nurses? Like, where do you do it? Oh, you people don't do it. Like, you are not involved in politics. You're taking care of people. And I kept thinking, I don't think that's right. There should be a forum where we should be doing this. And so I always tell the story how when I was working in a regional community hospital in the San Diego area, and after several years of me asking these questions, this fantastic nursing faculty from a local community area, she kind of heard that there's this nurse who keeps asking about policy and advocacy. And so she sought me out and she goes, there is this organization in Sacramento. They're called American Nurses Association. And I think that's what you're looking for. You need to go to Sacramento and you need to go ask them. So I hopped on a Southwest flight. I flew to Sacramento. I knocked on the door of ANAC in 2013. And I said, I want to help. What can I do? And that's how my journey started. So it was the passion and the willingness to stand up for what is right and to advocate and educate and influence the decision makers. We advocate and educate and influence decision makers every day of our professional career. Yeah. And then as the #1 trusted profession for past 22 years, we use our voices and our expertise and our transferable skills to advocate and educate and influence people in a community. So to take those very same skills and to take them in a policy and politics arena, it's way easier than be advocating with, colleagues, physicians, right? Right. Political arena is way easier. And I think that it's one of the barriers that nurses, that we feel that we are not prepared and we don't have the skills. We do. We are so prepared and we so have the skills, because look at me, you have to pick up a couple of skills as you go, but the basics, the core of my values, it's all nursing through and through.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a key point here, where the core values that nursing has, which is caring for humanity, right? I think hopefully that's at the root of all of the work that we're doing. And I think a lot of it's driven by them. But we'll talk about some skills, because I know, especially with ANA California, you have workshops for people who want to build those skills. But we'll get to that. But I want to touch on another point. You came to the U.S. As an immigrant, as I did. I was young. My mom brought me over when I was like 12 years old, but I think, how much of of the work that you're doing now do you think was driven by the fact that you came from a communist regime or an area where there was sort of like an oppressive regime where you weren't able to do everything and human rights weren't always up to par, sort of say, of what the nations may have considered that needs to happen? How much of your work do you think is driven by that?
I think that my initial answer was absolutely 100%. It's through and through. It's who I am. That's how I carry on myself in my personal life and in my professional life. And but maybe, I don't know, maybe 90%. But I really think that my upbringing and me being part of, as a kid, as a nursing student, being part of the Velvet Revolution in my country, where changes came around. Finally, political changes came around, and I was 18 years old, and I was the one advocating, and I was the one standing up to back then to the hospital administration, and I was pointing at them, and I was saying, you cannot be here. You did these awful crimes. You cannot be in leadership positions anymore. And I said, look, we're all here, right? All the nurses, we're all here. And then I looked behind me, and there was nobody. And I was just thinking, how can you like let me go by myself? And then I realized it because I was young, I had all these ideals and I had nothing to lose. Right? But what could they do? Like, right, I was, I just finished my nursing school. I was just applying for my new job. And but families and mothers and fathers with with bills and responsibilities. And what the communistic regime did is that they would punish me for speaking out, but they would punish my family. They would punish my sister. My sister would not be admitted to school, and then my grandma would not get health care, right? So,
Yeah.
so the punishment, the range of punishment for stepping on the system was severe.
Yeah.
But I felt they cannot do anything to me. I didn't even think what could happen to anybody else. But
Yeah.
then when I saw my colleagues who had little kids and they wanted their kids to get to schools, right, and they wanted to study, their ability to speak out against the wrong thing was severely limited. And that's where I realized that that's the power I have, and that's the huge benefit that I have, that I don't have to worry about my family to be looked after. And I think that no matter what issue, no matter how difficult or controversial the issues are in California politics and policy, and we know we have many, it's nothing compared to where I came from. And what the repercussions would be and what the punishment would be. And so I got my punishment because I was not allowed to continue my studies, and I was not allowed to be admitted to university. So, but then thankfully the regime was ending, and by speaking out against it and by uniting and motivating people when I was 18 and 19, I realized the enormous power I have when I am very passionate about something and when I truly believe in it.
Yeah.
And I think that I am like the work at ANAC, what we do, anytime I am invited to a presentation or to podcast, like the passion is absolutely palpable for me. And that's why I am able to bring fantastic people to do the work with me. That's why we can do so many fantastic programs and projects, such exactly with you, what we did, the several panel discussions, because we all believe very strongly in what it is. And people in our office like Jared and Chelsea and Teresa and now Marketa, only one of them is a nurse. The rest of them are non-nurses. And I so motivated them and inspired them that they think they're nurses. You know what I mean? Because we have this power. And I don't like to be using, nursing is superpower. I don't believe that that's how it should be. But we do have enormous power and enormous position in society and in American society, a huge privilege, and we have a huge platform. And when we're talking about advocacy, not just nursing, patient advocacy, and not just for our profession, but public health, social determinants of health, right? Food security, shelter, illiteracy, right? Those are all things that no matter how you look at it, it has something to do with public health and with health. And I saw where I came from. So I saw what oppression does to people. And obviously my oppression was very different than some of our minorities in California oppression, but still I understand what oppression is because I was oppressed. My nation was oppressed. And so while I do have privilege of being white and European, and now thanks to America Educated, I am very aware of how complicated and difficult it is to be standing up and speaking out if you don't have the support or if you don't have the skills and the knowledge. And I think that's what we're trying to do at ANAC. So it all comes from who I am. It all comes from my family. My dad, during the Velvet Revolution, I was doing, little demonstration and politics and standing up in our hospitals. And my dad then became the mayor of our city. And then he was part of the regional government. And so we've always been part of political system, and we've always been part of political changes. And you lose friends along the way, you lose family members, you lose some relationships. But if you're standing for what is right, it is what it is, right? This is what you have to do, because you have to speak up for people who cannot speak up for themselves. It's really easy to stamp on people who cannot speak for themselves. Yeah. But only the strongest of us, this is our responsibility and this is our moral obligation, and
Yeah.
that's the enormous nursing courage, which is core of me.
Yeah, I get that. And this, I guess this conversation kind of comes in timely with what's going on in the world right now. And not to get into the specifics of the politics of the world that's going on right now. I know, like, I see through social media, and I see through conversations with people, of people taking sides. And how much do you think? Well, I shouldn't say how much do you think. What do you think is the right, or maybe the more appropriate approach? Because so many people's thoughts and ideas today are driven by like American news, the social media. It's influenced based on that, and not necessarily always on historical context, or what the, it's a lot of it is driven by what they hear and what they see in social media or regular news, which is, neither right or wrong. But what do you think people can do to become more informed before they take that stand, as far as where they're going to kind of put their opinion, or put like their flag into the ground?
I think the moment you're educated about the basics of, if we're strictly talking about political process, the
Right.
moment you realize who has influence and why, because it's all money driven. And
Yeah.
so, right, if you don't have PAC, Political Action Committee, or if you are not wealthy organization that then is supporting political candidates with large sums of money, which
Right.
American political system allows, for not those players, it's a little bit harder. And
Yeah.
so it's, what is really important is to stay true to your moral compass and stay true to the core values. And if we're speaking for ANAC, those are our core values: integrity, honesty, advancement of the profession of nursing, and and improving our communications. And I think that also that is one thing. Another thing, what I learned from our extraordinary lobbyist, Roxanne Gould, every time we would be going to the state capitol for meetings with elected officials, I was very strong initially when I was going with her, like 2015, 2016. I was very strong on my arguments why they should or shouldn't support or oppose this very specific bill. And I was very strong on my arguments, and this is what I have to tell you, and this is why I'm right. And Roxanne would be standing there, and she goes, as strong as you are on your arguments, you have to be aware what are the arguments of the other side, and you have to have explanation and education why they're wrong. But you do not say they're wrong. You just say, I understand and I appreciate your point of view. However, the studies show, evidence-based shows, right? So she said, you should never just look at the one side. You should always be asking, so what is the other side? Where is the other side seeing it? And why is it that we are at a position where we are today? Yeah. And, speaking of, issues, conflicts in the world, I spent 6 weeks in Czech Republic with my mom after her surgery this summer, and there were several conflicts happening right at the very border of Europe, and now we have another conflict in the Middle East, and Europeans are scared.
Yeah.
Europeans are terrified and Europeans are scared. And when you kind of look at their political systems and their level of education and who has the money, who is supporting very specific sides of the conflict, that's where you get to, okay, we really need to go back to first grade, and we really need to teach our children to think differently and to critically think, right? I think that's what NCLEC is trying really to do, right? Critical thinking. So, and I think State of California is trying to do something very similar, in terms of critical thinking. And when you get the information, know what is misinformation, what is disinformation, where is it that you're going to find the source, and you're not citing Wikipedia in your academic papers. But the Governor Newsom just signed a bill, Assembly Bill 873, and that is requiring schools to do media literacy training so students can spot misinformation from questionable online sources.
Beautiful.
The fact that we have to put it in our educational curriculum is somewhat troubling to me.
Yeah.
But at least I appreciate that that's one of the issues what we are trying to do. Because what else can we do? We have to start with the children. We have to teach them, right?
Yeah.
How to verify.
And I appreciate that, because me coming from, especially with what's going on in the world right now, being from the Middle East, raised in, till I was 12, I was in Iran for well, not the whole time, about 6 years of my life I was in Iran. But I remember how the current conflict between Israel and Palestine was portrayed. Then I had the opportunity and privilege to learn more about that conflict in the US. So I see both sides. I get it. And it's hard for me because I sympathize with both sides. Like, both sides are kind of, excuse my language, it's a public podcast, but both sides are kind of getting screwed here, just because of, I think, all the extra hands that have been in the pot all these years that have stirred the pot, and like neither side is in a winning situation. And it's just kind of gotten to the point where I think this kind, like, I see the stuff that's on the news. I see the stuff that gets pushed from both sides, because especially on social media, like I'm looking at Middle Eastern news outlets, I'm looking at American news outlets, and they're showing both sides. But when people choose, as you mentioned, to look at just one side and not pay attention to what's going on, not that it makes any of the atrocities or the terrorism or anything like that any better or worse, I think it's important for us, even from a political perspective, to have what you mentioned, have the understanding at least of the other points of view, because it only helps to educate ourselves when we look and we speak about what we think is the truth, right? Because there's always multiple perspectives on the truth. So I think it's very important, and I appreciate California kind of taking that that piece forward with media training of what, how can people look at stuff, because I see stuff, people are posting stuff, and I'm like, I know that stuff is like 10 years old or 50 or 5 years old, and they're showing it as if it happened yesterday.
I agree with you.
That's not even true. So I can see how people can get those kind of blinders on, and anyway, my heart goes out to everybody who's been losing loved ones and is living under those conditions. So I appreciate that. Back to your let's get back to your story. So how did you decide, for example, how did you decide you're going to get into the role of being the executive director for ANA California? I know you started out as a volunteer.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming it wasn't the goal to be the executive director. How did you decide, like, you were going to take, you're going to keep going with your educational journey and get into the role of, it's a rather influential role for the, I mean, you're part of you're the executive director for ANA California, representing, what is it, like over 500,000 nurses?
Interested registered nurses. Yes.
So how did you decide this was going to be the role you're going to be stepping into?
Well, I think that when I was getting my bachelor's in political science at Cal State San Marcos, which, by the way, was absolutely fantastic university, and I was so lucky to be there. It was the pressure towards my academic career was that you have to study nursing. You just have to stay true to nursing and nurses. You have to study nursing. And I was thinking, I've already studied nurses. I already have 20 years of experience. I've already been certified pediatric nurse. I've been nurse anesthetist. I am working right in San Diego area. So I don't think so. I think that if I want to be effective at bringing about and implementing political sustainable change, I need to study the political system, and I need to study the system of administration, because I know nursing. I just don't know how it relates to all the other industries and how different decisions are being made. And so back then I kept saying, I need to be not at like the intersection, I need to be at the trisection of healthcare and nursing, management and administration, and politics and political will and political knowledge and political acumen. And so I felt that I have to figure out my education in terms that then I am at some position, I don't know what position, but I will be taking my nursing and healthcare considerable experience, my know-how and my acumen in terms of management and administration, and very specific skills in terms of politics and policy. So the fact I told you, I didn't know that ANAC even existed. So when I finally got here, all I wanted to do, I just wanted to be working in policy. It never occurred to me that I could be named the executive director, never. And, you know, and like something, 2013, 2014, somebody from Czech Republic, they came to me and they said, Marketa, you're educated, you're experienced, we need you to run for a seat in European Parliament. My immediate reaction was, oh my God, me? Oh, of course I can't. I am not educated. I don't know enough about, oh my God, I can't. And then I said, hey, why can I do that? I mean, I keep telling always nurses that we need to be running for a political office and we need to be, you know, involved in the policy or political sphere. And now they come to me and first thing I say, oh my God, I can't. So I'm thinking, no. I need to rethink my approach and I need to really step in the sphere where I can actually make a difference. So while I didn't think, because I lived in California and I had family here, I didn't want to go back to Europe and you know, and serve in European Parliament. But I thought, this is exactly the route I want to be doing. And if I'm not the elected official, I have to be educating them because my dad was elected official, my friends were elected officials. So I know what they know and I also know what they don't know. And so I thought, if I want to be helpful in a political process, that's why I love politics and everybody hates it. I get it. I just love politics. And so I thought I can be in a sphere where I can educate them and influence them. It never occurred to me that I would be leading this organization doing exactly this. But I think that I was maybe like 2 years volunteering at the office here at ANA California. And I was paying my rent from my savings from previous years. And so it just kind of came about where restructuring changes came around when there was a new board elected. And after restructuring and reorganizing, I think then the board was looking at, you know, we need to have somebody in California. California nurse needs to be doing it. And look, Marketa is educated and Marketa has done this. And she actually have been working in political campaigns. I was running political campaign here in California and the elected official got elected in the state capital. And so I always thought, I'm always very grateful that they took a chance on me. And it's not like chance. I was educated and I was prepared, but still, right. This is a huge role. And I have to tell you, I should not be even saying these things out loud, but I keep always talking. I'm like truth and I keep saying things. But I have to tell you that this is my 6th year in the role of executive director, or now they just changed my title into CEO, but I'm still doing, obviously, you know, my position. But only last 2 years, I feel that I'm no longer imposter. And it was brutal and brutal. I don't have any other word for it. It was brutal. Seriously, like last year and a half, I feel like I got this. I really got this. And even when I look before, we did fantastic job. We grew the organization by leaps and bounds. We've quadrupled our programs, we quadrupled our staff. So it's not that we were not doing anything before, but the very awful feeling of imposter syndrome, oh my God, alive and well. It was brutal. And I kept thinking, why do I have it? And every nursing colleague of mine I spoke about, and I was just telling, what would you do if you were in this position? They're like, oh my God, I would feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Every single nurse, highly educated, all my colleagues, right? So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm in a good company, but it's time. I am no longer an imposter. Yeah. But I don't think it's just me. We don't have that many nurses at these, as you said, thank you, influential positions. I work with California Hospital Association, and so BJ Bartleson, she retired, so now there is Sherry Lowe. I think she's a non-nurse, but she's vice president for nursing services, and I think it was a huge learning curve for her, but she's doing incredible work, and she's marvelous nursing advocate. I work with ACNL with Dr. Kimberly Long, and she was the CEO of a hospital, so she had way different experience than when I stepped into my role. And then I work with Health Impact with Dr. Garrett Chan, who is another incredible human being and highly educated nurse. And so if I don't know something, I have colleagues who I go to and who I ask, because part of growing up and part of maturing was that it's okay not to know something, but even at this level, in this position, but people know that I lead with passion and I lead with truth, and people know that if I don't know, I'll ask. So I am not making mistakes, I am not putting my organization in jeopardy, and we do the incredible work that we've been doing. So I always go to my colleagues, but I'm telling you, imposter syndrome, it's finally dead inside me, but I have to tell you, it was brutal.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, there's so many times, like, you bring up a really good point. And by the way, before I forget, I'm going to plug in Dr. Long and Dr. Chan, because they've both been on the podcast.
Oh, okay,
and they're both,
wonderful.
And then they're both incredible people, and I know them both well. So I appreciate you bringing them up, because they really are, and they're truly mentors. They really are truly mentors. But moving on to the idea of imposter syndrome, I think I'm not at the point. For certain things I can say I don't have it, but for other things it's very much alive and well. So it depends on the situation. Yep. For me, it's very situational. So anytime somebody asks if I can step into some new project or something like that, I'm like, I know I can do it, but that little, I've never done it before, or I've never, so I can imagine. So congratulations on killing your imposter syndrome.
I killed it. and you know where it actually also came from, because I've been mentoring people I didn't even have a job here. I didn't even have a position because we didn't have a budget, and I was already mentoring people. I didn't even view it as mentoring. Yeah. People came to me, they were interested in policy and politics, usually for masters, right? MSN usually for their projects. And so I think that we just hired a new policy aide, Marketa Trainum. She's master prepared registered nurse. So we just hired her 2 weeks ago for ANAC. She reached out to me in 2015 or 2016 when she was doing her master's, and she interviewed me because she was interested in policy and politics. Nice. And we stayed in touch. Then she went through our fellowship program. Then she went through the national fellowship program. And when the time came, perfect timing. So who are we going to hire? It has to be a nurse, and he or she needs to work in policy and politics. Boom, right? So I've done so many interviews, and I've talked to so many masters or DNP students, and they look at me that I am the mentor. But I am telling you, right, for the longest time, I felt that I was the imposter. But when I was talking to these students, I felt, I got this, right? I know what I'm talking about. I am good at this. This is right. This is my sphere of expertise. I am really good at this. And I can motivate and inspire and educate people and get them excited about policy and politics. And thanks to all those students, I felt, I'm no longer an imposter. I am really, right? I am really standing on my own 2 feet and leading the organization and serving the profession of nursing. And that's where I finally killed it.
And I think it's important. I mean, somebody with your number of years of experience and education, for you to feel like that, it's only natural. You know what I'm more concerned about? People who are starting out but don't have that imposter syndrome. That worries me.
That worries me too.
So that's, if somebody's brand new, like straight out of the gate, and they're like, I don't have that. I'm like, That's a red flag for me right there. So,
I absolutely agree with you. And I'm
uh,
telling you, like right now, my mom is in Czech Republic, but right now she has a hiccup and she doesn't know why, because I'm telling you the fact that I said it out loud, that I had this imposter syndrome, my mom will kill me at home. You should have never said it.
That's funny. So I want to touch one more thing, one more topic with you before before we get into really the work of ANA California, which you've been leading for several years. I want to ask about policy and politics, because I very much believe in the fact that nursing is political, whether you like it or not. Nursing is political. Um, how do you see us doing a better job as a profession to get more nurses engaged in the world of policy and politics? Because I think I'm not talking about policy and politics where they sit on social media and they put stuff out. That's not what I'm talking about. But how do they actually engage in policy that turns into laws and regulations, where there's dollars associated, where it has some teeth that can actually make impactful change? Where do you think we're falling short as a profession? Because even when we look at ANA, the mothership of American Nurses Association, only I think it's something like 400,000 members out of 4 million nurses out there that are engaged with the primary organization, which is directly linked to policy and regulations and things like that. Where are we falling short, and what does nursing need to do better in helping our student nurses and our nurses overall be more engaged in this world?
Oh wow, this is the most important question. This is the core issue and core question that we have in trying to bring more nurses in the sphere of politics and policy. You know, for my DNP project with my advisor, Dr. Katie Waxman,
she's also been on the show.
I know that. I know. She was instrumental in me, you know, DNP project. I want to change the world, and so she kept telling me, "You cannot change the world. You cannot change California. You need to," right? So I kind of, when I narrowed on my project, I wanted to see when was the first intro that nurses or nursing students had to the importance of politics and policy. And it was Katie who was telling me, you should not be focused on the word politics so much, because it could be off-putting, right? It could bring up barriers. It could bring up aversion. So I spoke a lot about nursing and policy. And through my project, I found that the first time nurses would hear how nursing is political, because, oh my God, that should be written in every nursing school above the entry, because so it was master's MSN students. That was the first time that nurses heard and learned about the importance of politics or policy on nursing and the role nurses could and should play inside the world of politics and policy. And it was shocking to me, right? Like at master's, at the second year master's, right? That was like 80% of the people I surveyed, 80% told me that it was at the master level. And I'm thinking, so what is the percentage of master prepared registered nurses? Is it 15% or 18%, maybe something like that? And I apologize if I have something
low,
like that.
But it's fairly low.
Yeah. So I remember that, you know, when I was writing my paper, it was somewhere around 15%. So let's say 18%, but that's not enough. If we have now ANA says that we have 5.1 or 5 million registered nurses, and if we have even 18% of master's prepared nurses, it's still really small percentage of what we need in everyday policy arena. So I thought, so it has to be before. So it has to be at the baccalaureate or at the community level. And when I kept asking my colleagues and friends, confidentially, because nobody wanted to speak on record, when I kept asking them, do you teach it? And if yes, fantastic. If not, why?
Yeah.
I've always heard that I don't know enough about the subject. I would be terrified that I'm going to say something and students will ask me and I will not have the answer. And I could absolutely understand the conundrum, where half the time I was terrified, right? Half the time I was terrified if I didn't have the right answer, that people would view me as incompetent and would be questioning, my work at ANAC. So I absolutely understand the fear. But also, nobody actually knew that there is ANA and ANAC. And this is what we do. We are 501c6 lobbyist political organization. Why don't you reach out to us and we can give you talking points, or we can give you, we can record a presentation. And so when I kept asking like that, this is when my colleagues and friends were inviting me to do presentation for their schools or for their nursing programs. So that's what I've been doing over the last 5 years. And I absolutely loved it. And the fact that I could drive somewhere and visit these nursing school and nursing, it was incredible. And then COVID hit and we went on Zoom and it's just madness. But it is what it is. So, and I know that 4 years ago, I was invited to this community college, and I kept asking them, so do you know what the Institute of Medicine report is? And they go, uh-huh. I'm thinking, wow. Then next week, I was invited in a baccalaureate program, and I said, so do you know what the Institute of Medicine report is? No, never heard it, don't know what you're talking about. So that's where I realized the level of academic progression at this very stage doesn't matter. It should be part of nursing education.
Yeah.
And well, sorry about that, goes to you then. The ball is in your court. And I don't know how to change it, because I know that there is policy class, but also, when I attended different nursing programs and when I asked them, what course did you invite me to come in? Some was leadership, some was professional development, and a couple of times I was invited into the policy course for the semester, and they were discussing insurances and they were discussing, healthcare systems, which I understand that is important, but that is not really what nursing policy is about, or should not be, right? Yeah. We should also be talking about the incredible role we have, and again, the privileged position of influence in our society, that when we talk about something, when we tell them that this is really important and this is why, people listen. And I don't think we have capitalized on this enormous political capital. Like, everybody would give almost anything to have this political capital, and we still leave it underutilized. Yeah. And so one way, right, what we can do is through ANAC, that we have our advocacy institute. We have, every year we have fellows. We're trying to do different campaigns, right? Jared at our office, Jared Fessler calls it campaigns, but those are like little different programs, different webinars, seminars. We just need to be talking about it more. Yeah. But even when we talk about it, there still has to be the tie back to, right? So then what is the step that you, what is the step that you're going to make to advance the profession of nursing? And many times I hear back, what the heck are you doing? Because it's public podcast. What the heck are you doing in politics? Nursing should not be about politics. Nursing we should just be giving care to everybody, and we shouldn't care about anything else. And I'm always thinking, like, whoever told you that, right? Yeah. Because nursing is inherently political. And just when I say, what is it that you can and cannot do, at the bedside as a nurse in your profession, who decides that? Yeah. And many times the answer is BRN or the hospital association or the hospital. And so when I tell them, no, actually, it's the California state elected officials. It's not even the federal government. It's the California state officials that are sitting right from our office across two blocks. They go, oh my God, we didn't know that. That's all it takes for nurses to realize, oh my God, that's why we have to be part of the sphere. That's why. Yeah. It takes me 10 minutes, right? It's like, it's really not that complicated or that difficult. I shouldn't be saying it out loud or I'm not going to have a job, but it's really about motivating and educating people.
Yeah, and most people don't realize, and
Yeah.
you know, that's something actually when I teach actually any of my courses, I try to put in like politics and policies and into the works of it. And it's one thing that most people don't understand. Like you're concerned about health insurance,
Yeah.
homelessness, drug, alcohol abuse, whatever you want to, anything you want to think about. It all comes back to policies that have been set, whether a
Yeah.
100 years ago it was
Mm-hmm.
signed into law yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything is policy. Everything is policy driven. Change is policy driven.
Absolutely.
If there's no policy, it's not happening, right? Because
It's
there's no
not happening.
dollars. There's no dollars associated with it. And then
Absolutely.
that's one of the things I try to emphasize with my students, and they don't always think of it that way, but and that's why it's important for them to realize and it's one of the reasons I do this podcast is like to kind of grow. You know, a lot of I use this in my classes, and a lot of I know there's several universities that use this podcast in their coursework, and that's why I always say, you know, we need to open up the eyes of our students at the very beginning of the program. Like I was talking to master's students that I was mentoring. And I was talking about exactly what you just mentioned, the Institute of Medicine report, and she has never heard of it. I'm like, it came
Oh
out
my
in
God.
2010, 2010 it came out, and they've never
Yeah.
heard of it. And that's, I think that's shameful on our part as a profession that we continue to have people who have never heard of this. And it's shameful that I would say something like that the student that would say, "Well, never heard of it." Oh, like, well,
Yeah.
let me say, let me tell
Let
you
me tell
about
you
it and
how
how it's
crucial it
yeah.
is. Yeah, yeah.
So,
I
and
absolutely
these are
agree.
master's level people. So, but you're right. But I bet you there's doctoral prepared people that probably haven't heard of it either. Uh,
No, yeah, I had the associate faculty at one a doctoral program at a university here in California. And so, you know, they emailed me and asked me, can you give me some information? I said, of course, I never say no. Of course, that's why I'm here. We serve our members and non-members. So I'm always here to give information and always help and support. So I wrote them back. Thank you for your question. The California legislative session is a 2-year session. The session starts, you know, like in January. And so let's see what year can be, what let's see what the bill will do in the second year of the session. And they kept coming back, what do you mean second year of the session? And I said, and they were teaching policy.
yeah,
And I said, well, because, right, it's like, you know, 2-year session. So this is the first year. Now this is what do you mean second year? Like, what do you mean 2-year bills? And I'm thinking, so of course I educated them. That's not the issue. The issue is that professor was teaching, right, doctoral level policy course. And I felt that is somewhat problematic, and that is
yeah,
very sad on our part.
yeah.
But if you don't know what you don't know, how can you get
Exactly,
educated?
exactly,
So I
exactly.
was glad that they asked me, and I was glad that I could help. And now I send them updates. So I want to make sure that that's not to put somebody down. That's not why I shared it, and I don't share any identifiers. But it's just simply to say that even people at very high end positions don't sometimes know or realize the
Yeah.
importance we have inside politics and policy.
And I think from a faculty perspective, so many faculty are put into roles without necessarily the experience. You know, they're handed a syllabus and a book and say, go teach it. And especially if the accrediting bodies are not worried about certain courses of who's teaching and who's not teaching it, it turns out like, you know, they may have been that person who got caught with the syllabus and the book. So
Yep.
they may not know. So I think, but I think as a profession, we need to do a lot better job as to
Agreed.
teaching our nurses and getting them engaged in the world of policy and politics. We don't have that much time left. I want to make sure that we talk about ANA California, and I'm so thankful for ANA California because I'm going to plug in my own Veterans Health Campaign. I'm so grateful that you guys partnered with me on that because I think it's for me it's my passion project. But I want to talk about ANA California and the work it's doing because I think it's so crucial to to the nursing world, at least in California anyway, and hopefully other people are copying and pasting it into their own states. So if you want to talk about ANA California.
Yeah. No, everything would I've been very kindly invited to be on your podcast. Everything what I've been sharing with you from my personal or professional journey, those are all the core issues that we are trying to improve or advance or change at ANAC. It is, based on my doctoral project, when we figure out that it really is no, in my gap analysis, it was very clear that in California, we do not have any resources for nurses that they can learn more about why is it that we are so crucial inside politics and policy, and how to go about it, and how do you reach out to your elected official. So for my DNP project, I put together ANAC public policy kit, public policy toolkit, and based on that toolkit, then we've developed ANAC Advocacy Institute. And so this is the third year when we have 5 fellows working on actively changing policy in California and in nursing. We work on issues from mental health to be developing more our advocacy fellowship, because we want to have it a little bit wider reach. We want to have more fellows. We need to develop the structure of the program. So one of our fellows is working on that. We had 2 fellows work on racism in nursing and healthcare. That is something that we will have a report out, I think, spring 2024. We just developed and just enacted racism in nursing academia work group. So that is something that our policy fellow is working on. We offer several of the nurses in media training sessions and appointments, because we think that that in order for us to be effective, not just inside state capital or district offices, but also the Future of Nursing 2030 recommendations clearly state that we should be more involved in policy change at whatever level it is. So now they also include social media or podcasting or writing op-ed pieces or writing for various nursing or non-nursing platforms such as nurse.org or nurse.com or whatever all those platforms are.
Right.
And so that is something that we are trying to develop, educated nurses in terms of policy and politics, educated or knowledgeable in terms of nurses in media, able to write not academic papers, but really op-ed pieces or really educational pieces for the public. Because when you look at it, it's the public that then elects the public members, right, to serve at our state capital. Right. There is still not one nurse. There are like 3 physicians and not one nurse, right, out of the 120 people at the California state capital. So these are the main programs that we are trying to achieve and change the policy through having nurses educated and comfortable at talking about politics and policy and changing the actual policy at their institutions or at the state capital level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for anybody, and I think I need to mention this because sometimes people I've seen on social media come out. So I just want to clarify: American Nurses Association California is different than the California Nurses Association. California Nurses Association is a union. Is a labor union. Mm-hmm. The American Nurses Association California is a subsidiary professional organization, not the labor union. Because I know sometimes people get on social media and beat up ANA California for no reason whatsoever, because they don't know the difference. So I need to put that out there before anybody sends me any hate mail or whatever. So nothing wrong with labor unions. But I just want to clarify that the two are not the same, because some states are combined. The labor union and the American Nurses Association of that state are one and the same. California, 2 separate organizations.
And if I may, we used to be one and the same, but then in 1994 was the split, and now there are 2 separate individual organizations. Yes.
Different missions, different. So I have to put that out there because I've seen on social media once in a while somebody jumps on and beats up ANA California for a labor union issue. And I'm like, and I feel like I need to go on there and say wrong one. So I appreciate that. So thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time. But I want to make sure that I know you're a busy person. So we have been listening to Dr. Marketa Houskova. She is the CEO, Executive Director, CEO of American Nurses Association, California. And very grateful for your support for the Veterans Health Campaign that you supported moving forward. And I'm very grateful for the work that you're doing for the state of California and the nurses within the state of California. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the RN Mentor with your host, Ali Tayeb. Please don't forget to visit www.alirtayeb.com. That's www.alirtayeb.com for podcast notes and resources. And don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, I wish you fair winds and following seas.